Talking about something you're a fan of is a bit like backseat driving, so I'm going to talk about it from the back of a car. This is Backseat Fandom. Welcome back to Backseat Fandom. Today we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame and the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer that just dropped this morning. So, I'm going to try and remember to have some visual aids here as I go, but I'm going to be editing this quick so that it gets up today. So if I don't get any up there, or if they're fairly sparse, that's why. I'm going to start by talking about the new trailer for Far From Home. And here's why. It confirms something that people were assuming. In it, they flat out say that there is now a multiverse. There probably was before. They're just now, saying, yes, in fact, it does exist. This is important for some of the things I need to talk about for Endgame. So that's why I'm getting that out of the way first. So, other things about the trailer. We get Mysterio. We had already kind of seen Mysterio, but now we realize this is an alternate Earth Mysterio, who appears to be a hero, although I wouldn't be terribly surprised if the twist is no, he's really been a villain the whole time. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And it looks like that, Spider-Man is going on a interdimensional adventure. Who could have seen that coming with the success of Into the Spider-Verse? Woo. Alright, so we got that. We got the existence of the multiverse. That's about all we really get out of the trailer, other than it definitely appears like Peter is starting down the path of technological genius slightly more than the I made my own web shooters, which impressed Tony in the first place. Tony is missed, blah, blah, blah. That is about all we really get out of the trailer without going frame by frame analyzing it. I've watched it once, so that was my first impressions on it. Now let's move on to Endgame. Very obviously, spoilers. I mean, I've tagged this thing spoilers. You probably got some spoilers from the trailer if you saw it, or if you heard me just talking about it now. Regardless, one last time, spoilers for Endgame. Alright. So, the multiverse thing that everybody is talking about. I've watched a couple of, other people talking about things about Endgame and about the connotations of some of the stuff. They all seem to be focusing in on two of the possible universes. The one where Steve Rogers basically ended up going back in time and lived his life. Basically what kind of impact that would have on that world. To the point where the Russos had to come out and confirm, no, that is an alternate reality, and Steve Rogers came back for that conversation at the end of Endgame. I'll get to that conversation at some point, too. They've been focusing in on that one, where it's basically kind of a world without S.H.I.E.L.D., or S.H.I.E.L.D. would have formed differently. Definitively with Steve Rogers there knowing that Hydra is still around. They've been focusing on that. Not the one I want to talk about, really. They've been focusing on the second one, where Loki got the hold of the Tesseract, the Space Stone, and got away. The one that they ended up taking the Mind Stone from. There's a lot of conversation about that, about, we're going to see Loki again because of that. Not necessarily true. Although, I'm not certain Loki is dead in the main universe, so we'll come back to that. That's not really the universe I want to talk about either. Set that one aside. Those are the two that everybody seems to be talking about, but it wasn't the one that jumped out to me. Now, I'm going to cover at least one more here before I get to the one I really want to talk about. So, we got those two. We got the one that I want to talk about, and then we've got the one with the altered Asgard. The one where they used archive footage of Natalie Portman to have Jane Foster in it, without having to pay her, probably. And where Freya may not have died, due to the changes, like Rocket having extracted the Reality Stone, means that Freya might not die in that universe. Don't really want to talk too much about that one either. We'll set that one aside. The one I want to talk about is the one where they got the Power Stone and the Soul Stone from. The one where, because you got to remember, that was one group that showed up, and then they split up to go take care of both objectives at the same time. Kind of like what was supposed to happen with the Power Stone or the Space Stone and the Mind Stone, except they screwed up with the Space Stone. So they ended up having to, go back, even further to get that one. I don't think that one inspired much changes, although I definitely like the kind of sideways reference to Enzo Stark. Not what I'm talking about. Talking about the one with the Power Stone and the Soul Stone. So, that is also the universe where all of Thanos' forces come from, for the Thanos that shows up at the end of the, in the big climatic battle at the end. That is that universe's Thanos. And he dead. Like, whatever else Tony may or may not have done with, the Infinity Stones, Thanos is dead. All the forces he brought with him were wiped out. Maybe including Gamora, maybe not. I don't know how we're doing that. That one kind of remains to be seen. So, all of those forces are gone. Thanos is gone. The Power Stone can get put back, but Peter Quill has already missed out his adventure. That universe probably doesn't have a Guardians of the Galaxy. Peter Quill got knocked out, the Power Stone got taken before anybody else could show up. The entire plot of Guardians 1, gone, especially since Nebula dead, and Gamora maybe dead or definitely not back in that universe. So even if, Captain America put the Power Stone back, that universe is screwed up. And then we're coming to the Soul Stone. I don't think the Soul Stone got put back. And here's multiple levels of why. So first off, we're not even sure it can get put back. It was kind of sealed away in a weird way that required a sacrifice. We don't know if there is any way to put it back how it was. Secondly, the person who was guarding it, the Red Skull, and the person who was putting the stones back, Steve Rogers, Captain America. After having spent his entire first movie trying to get a Infinity Stone away from the Red Skull, I don't think he's going to just hand one over. I think that Steve Rogers, moderately intelligent guy, not, genius level, but smart guy, can think tactically, one of the better tactical minds in the universe, can go, this universe can't be put back on track, and its Thanos is gone. There was no reason for him not to just keep a hold of the Soul Stone. Probably not the Power Stone. He probably would have put the Power Stone back first, and then gone to put the Soul Stone back. I kind of assume. So, I'm going off the assumption of the Soul Stone didn't get put back, either because it couldn't, or because he wasn't going to hand it over to its guardian, Red Skull. This also might explain part of why he decided to just basically give himself a 50-year timeout, or more. We don't know exactly when he went to. It looked kind of like it was going to be the 70s again. So maybe it was, roughly 50-year timeout. That looked to be about how much older he was. He looked like he might have been in his 80s when he looked like he might have been in his 30s before. So, right around there. So we'll get back to the Soul Stone in a moment. Let's talk about old Steve Rogers. Now, wasn't exactly something I saw coming. I knew it was a possibility. I mean, Chris Evans has been talking a lot about getting out from in front of the camera, getting behind the camera. How his contract was up, he wasn't going to be doing the part anymore. He was making a lot of talk about it. Everybody kind of expected him to die. I am very glad that he had, the time to pick up Thor's hammer, though. That was best scene in the movie. Is, Captain America fighting Hammer and Shield. Best scene. So we've got old Steve Rogers. As soon as I saw it was old Steve Rogers and they had both Falcon and Bucky standing there, I was like, I really hope he hands it over to Bucky. But I know he's not going to, because the old man Steve Rogers storyline had him pass it over to Falcon. Sure enough, passes it over to Falcon. Honestly, what I had wanted to see, I knew was never going to happen. What I wanted to see was a William Burnside storyline. But that's just kind of me, because I think that the political climate is right, that it would have been interesting to see a storyline with Captain America, Commie Smasher. The 1950s one that was William Burnside in disguise. Although, to be fair, if it were done right, it would have required Chris Evans to sign on again, because William Burnside had plastic surgery to make himself look like Steve Rogers, etc., etc. I knew it wasn't going to happen, would have liked to see it. Whatever. So he passes it off to Falcon. Bucky would have been my second choice, because Bucky was the second one to, was the next in line after William Burnside to take up the mantle. Would have liked to see that. And his mantle of the Winter Soldier is sort of tainted, so being able to take on an entirely new mantle would have been good for him. Whereas the Falcon has his own mantle. He's a first-generation hero, but, there was nothing wrong with the Falcon. Oh well, again, what's done is done. They're probably not going to turn it around or anything. You never know if they get, Chris Evans back on board. Maybe they, give Captain America some Infinity Formula and call it good. Probably not. All right, speaking of return of characters, we're going to move on to the end scene, the scene at the end of the climatic battle where Tony dies. I was paying attention to that because Robert Downey Jr. had been making a lot of comments about how he could play the role forever. He could have infinite money, playing the role forever. He liked the role. He didn't really want to give it up. And I'm not sure if Disney's going to do this, but they have definitely left themselves a few loopholes to get Tony Stark back. There is, of course, the obvious one where it is the alternate universe versions aren't exactly the same Tony, but, they could have Robert Downey Jr. come back and reprise the role. That's not the one I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about an idea. So, if you notice, after Tony uses the Infinity Stones, he has no more lines. There are no more lines from Tony Stark after using the Infinity Gauntlet. In point of fact, he doesn't really seem to have any impetus of his own. Any sort of, not necessarily motivation, but any actual ability to move himself. Now, people are going to be like, oh yeah, well that's just, because he was so injured from from using the stones. Maybe. But he didn't seem to recognize anybody. He was just kind of this empty shell living right up until the moment when the biological functions stopped. Almost like he was soulless. And we know the Soul Stone can take people inside it. It was even confirmed for Infinity War that Thanos did, in fact, get to see Gamora inside the Soul Stone. That was kind of a director's commented on, yes, that's what that scene was supposed to be. So there's that. So Tony might be trapped in the Soul Stone that Steve Rogers probably hung onto. Now, I think old man Steve Rogers might still end up being around in the universe, because I don't necessarily know he's going to be able to get right back to the universe he had been living in. And considering he probably showed up after Peggy Carter died, he probably didn't necessarily want to. He might just decide to retire in his home universe. Or, start helping out S.H.I.E.L.D. in the background. as what happened with, Old Man Steve Rogers in the comics. But this leaves a definitive path for them to bring back the original Tony Stark, is via the Soul Stone, there, especially since, and this is also compounding on top of all the rest of this with the Soul Stone, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has been teased to include Adam Warlock, who, in the comics, is intrinsically tied to the Soul Stone. So we might very well see that. I think that also might be the path for them getting Gamora back as well, because the Soul Stone that she was sacrificed for was atomized. So it is possible that they might be able to retrieve her using the other Soul Stone. Maybe, kind of, sort of. It's a little early to be speculating too much on Guardians, though. We haven't seen much of anything on it other than the teaser of Adam Warlock. So there's that possibility, and I gotta say, gonna be able to see Thor going along with the Guardians is probably gonna be hilarious. I think that just about covers everything I wanted to talk about these two things, about Endgame and about Far From Home. We're gonna obviously see some more Far From Home, stuff coming up in the near future now that they've started to release proper trailers, now that Endgame spoilers are basically out there. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of, Backseat Fandom. So, until next time, have a good one.